It is my absolute great pleasure to introduce our Gen A host for today. As a rule of thumb, we always want our Gen A's to be hosting these sessions. This is not about me, it's about you. And it's about me trying to align your interests with the speakers that we have. So Kate Purcell is a Senior Policy Advisor in the Victorian Department of Health's COVID-19 division, but her substantive role is in international policy, is as an international policy advisor with the Department of Premier and Cabinet in Victoria, and she specialises in South and Southeast Asia engagement. She is part of Young Australians in International Affairs and of course is a celebrated Gen A. And she also has particular interest in Malaysian and Indonesian ties with Australia. So I don't think we could get a better Gen A host for today. Thank you so much, Kate, for coming on board and hosting with us. It's so wonderful to have you. And I'm going to hand over to you now. So thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Eloise, and thank you, everyone. I'd like to share a warm welcome to everyone joining today. I'm really excited for this discussion. The topic we're exploring could not be more exciting or timely, I think. The buzz around sustainability continues to grow as the educated consumer, who is us, and overwhelmingly young people demand more from our suppliers, not just in prioritizing the quality or the value of product, but also in the transparency on how it got to the shelves in the first place. So I'm personally looking forward to understanding this trend in Malaysia from Sasi more broadly today. Alongside the rising conscientious young consumer, there is this rise, as we've just ascertained, in interest in social enterprises and social impact across the region. Social enterprises essentially introduce a new paradigm for business management, and in the core purpose that it goes beyond revenue and profit to integrate itself into a fabric of society and to create change. And that's something that young people are increasingly saying they want to have throughout their careers. So while there's this growing spirit of possibility and opportunity in social enterprises, for me, the practicalities of starting up and taking the plunge seem complex and daunting. And I think that's the same for a lot of Gen A's who say they're interested in starting social enterprise or entering the space. So as a young professional, how exactly do we take an idea to a passion and make it a fully fledged and sustainable enterprise? And when making that leap, what are the tools we need? What should we know? What's the fun parts and the down parts? And that's why we're really honored to be joined by all the way from Malaysia, Sasibai Kimis, who can tell us a little bit about her insights from her journey. So Sasibai is the founder of and the Chief Innovation Officer of Earth Heir, which she left an incredibly successful career in the finance industry to start in 2013. Prior to founding Earth Heir, Sasi was the Vice President of the Investments Division at Khazanah Nasional in Malaysia. She was the Director in the Private Equity Team at First Avenue Partners LLP in London. She worked in Ghana with Opportunities Industrialization Centre International and the United Nations Development Programme, as well as in New York as an investment banker analyst with Lehman Brothers. So a truly worldly and inspiring career for a lot of us. So welcome, Sasi. I hope Australia is on the cards at some points for you too in the future. If you don't mind, we'll just dive straight into conversation. So briefly to begin with, and I know you might have some slides to run us through for this, heading back to the inception of Earth Heir, would you mind telling us a little bit about it as a social enterprise? What was your process? Take us through that journey from ideation to switching your corporate career and dedicating yourself to an impact-driven career.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Eloise. Good afternoon to everyone in Australia and good morning to everyone else dialing in from this part of the world. So I think to answer the question, so one of the key questions I get asked normally is, why did I do the switch from a corporate career into running a social enterprise? Let me just share some slides here. And I can, there we go. Okay. So as Kate said, I founded Earth Heir in 2013, but I wanted to kind of share a little bit about my background because it is related to why I ended up starting Earth Heir. So I'm Malaysian. I'm of Indian ethnicity. My grandfather came from India, the early 1900s to Malaysia. So my dad was born in Malaysia. I'm born in Malaysia. But we still have a lot of family in southern India and Tamil Nadu. So we used to go there for summers. And it was during these trips to India that when we went to the villages, that I realized the life that I have in Malaysia is in fact a very privileged one that many people around the world don't have. And for me to understand that or realize that at a young age, and then I also experienced like some of my family members and relatives in India, dying due to lack of access to like basic healthcare. So I started thinking like, what can I do, right? So I thought, as I grew up, I started thinking that, perhaps one of the ways I can do that is by earning lots of money, right? And donating the money away. So at age 13, I was sent away to study in Singapore. And then, when I started applying for universities, I ended up going to Wharton. And Wharton is known for finance. So I ended up studying finance. And after graduating from Wharton, the typical career path that everyone took was either like you go and work with a management consulting firm like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, or you go and work with an investment bank like Goldman or Lehman. And well, Lehman is no more. But that was a typical career path. So I thought, okay, based on what I think I want to do, I know I want to make a difference, but I don't know how to do it. So maybe the best way for me to do it is to go and make millions and donate the, money, right? So that was the first path that I took, which I then went to New York, worked at Lehman, and was working like more than 100-hour weeks. And I was earning a lot of money for a 21-year-old, living up the life. But very quickly, I also began to be disillusioned because I realized that people I worked with, I mean, being, as good as they were more concerned about the financial market, like whether the Dow Jones or the NASDAQ was going up or down, and not really thinking about what's happening around the world. While me being Malaysian, being Indian, I felt like, my mind was not just in the US, my mind is outside of the US. And I'm thinking about all of these things that are happening outside and thinking about how can I make a difference rather than just helping multi-billion-dollar companies become bigger. So I thought, maybe I should go and study and learn how to do this. How can I make a greater difference? So I actually quit my job, and I ended up going to Cambridge to do my master's. And my master's was in environment and development, because I have a keen passion about the environment and nature. And I did my master's thesis on microfinance and how access to microfinance improves women's position in society and also improves environmental attitudes. So after Cambridge, I really, really wanted to go work with a nonprofit in Africa, but surprisingly, finding a job with a nonprofit was harder than getting a job at Lehman. So I don't have it on here, but I actually went back to Malaysia. I came back to Malaysia and I worked with our family firm, which is a railway construction firm. So we build railway tracks. But I got an opportunity to do an internship with the UN. Oh, it says 25 here. I think I was about 24. I borrowed money from my parents and packed up a suitcase and went across to Ghana and worked at the UN for like, it was meant to be a 2-month internship, but I loved being in Ghana so much that I ended up staying there for 6 months. And then I realized that I wanted to stay there longer. So I actually looked for a job. So I ended up working at OIC International. So when I was at OIC was when I saw we were working with HIV/AIDS orphans, and we were working with people displaced by gold mining companies. And and I remember thinking to myself, we're doing a lot of good here, but we're always struggling for money, because we don't have enough money, we don't have enough grants and funds to keep doing the good that we're doing. And then if I contrasted that with my life in New York, we have a lot of money, but we're not actually thinking about doing good for the communities. So I thought, why does it have to be either or? Can there not be a position or situation where we can keep making money and we can keep doing good? And I think it was in Ghana where the seeds of like social entrepreneurship, were built in my life. So after about 2 years in Ghana, I ended up going back to London because I sort of ran out of money and needed to pay my student loans. And so I went back to London, and I actually tried very hard for months and months to look for a job in the development sector, either with a development consulting firm or an NGO, but they, I suppose, couldn't afford or didn't want me. So in the end, I ended up working with another financial services firm. It's private equity advisory firm. So I learned about, we worked with private equity funds, hedge fund of funds. And it was around this time that I was heading towards the big 3-0. And, some of you here, I think you may realize that when you get towards a birthday that ends with a 0 is when you start thinking a lot about your life and what have you done and what have you achieved with your life. So at that point, I started thinking about my life, and I started thinking about my parents, my family in Malaysia. And as a young person at that time, I also started thinking, instead of complaining about Malaysia, about the political situation or our leaders or where the economy was going, I thought it would be great if I could go back, and I do go back to Malaysia and be part of the change. Don't complain, like come back and do something about what you're complaining about. So that was, part of the reason why I went back, and I ended up getting a job with Khazanah, which is Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund. So I ended up working in Khazanah under the sustainable development team. So at that point, we were looking at investing in carbon emissions reduction. So we looked at technology, green technology around this. So Khazanah was a great stepping stone for me. And so after working at Khazanah for about 2.5 years, one day while I was driving home at night, I had been working for almost 6 months straight. I've been working really, really long hours. I was driving and I fell asleep while I was driving. And it was a micro sleep, thankfully. So I woke up, my car was still on the road. But that incident made me sort of, decide that I need to do something else with my life, because I thought, if I had died that night, would I have been proud of the life that I've lived? So I started asking these questions, and I thought I really seriously need to think about what I'm doing with my life, because if I kept on in the trajectory that I was going on, it would have been a very comfortable trajectory of life. You know, I would have been earning a good salary. But I started thinking about, what kind of legacy do I really want to leave behind? What kind of life do I want to build that I would be proud of when I'm no longer here? Um, so this is actually, I mean, this is a bit of a, this is my dad. So my dad passed away about 2 years ago. And the reason I want to talk about him is because he was my biggest critic when I decided to quit my job. He was like, why are you doing this? You know, you have no idea what you're going to do next. You know, don't waste your education. Don't waste your talents. But my father was also my biggest inspiration for what I'm doing now. And so when I quit Kazana and I decided to take time off, I started, I went to Hawaii. I was learning natural farming, and I was in Cambodia, building schools and teaching English. And it was during this time that I met with weavers there, and who were struggling with selling their products. You know, the middlemen were making most of the money. So I thought, you know, what can I do to help? So I just started buying from women who were sex trafficking victims and children. I mean, just, you know, I went to shelters for children rescued from brothels, and so I started working with their families and trying to support them economically. So I started buying their products. But at that point, it was still very much a hobby. You know, it was something that I was doing on the side to help. It was not a business. I never at all thought of starting a business. And it was during that time that I started talking to a lot of other entrepreneurs, and, you know, started thinking about, how do I decide what to do next with my life? You know, I've done all these different things, I have all these different passions, I have all these different interests, but, and I have so many ideas. So how do I know what I should do? So the advice that I got from a dear friend, his name is Brian. And Brian said, you know, Sasi, if you want to figure out how to live your life and what to choose to do with your life and your efforts, you should write a personal mission statement. And I was like, what? You know, what does that mean? And so he encouraged me to ask all of these questions. Because of my conversations with him, I actually ended up writing a guide on how to write your personal mission statement. And so, you know, thinking through these questions, I took about 3 months to write a personal mission statement, and this is what I ended up with. So this is my current personal mission statement, you know, and one that I wrote in 2012, I believe. And so this really helped me think through, like, so when I got a business idea, so one of the business ideas I had early on was an alcohol delivery business, right? So I thought, hey, when people are having parties, they want to have alcohol, and, you know, it's like alcohol in demand, so we'll deliver alcohol for parties. I'm like, oh, what a great idea, I'll probably make money. But then I thought about, does that actually align with my mission statement? You know, is this something that I would want to wake up every morning and do? So since it didn't align with my mission statement, I let it go. And I met with an impact investor through a friend. His name is Dr. Kim Tan. And I told him about what I was doing with the women from Cambodia. And he said, look, Sasi, if you really want to help these women, this cannot be a hobby. It cannot be a side gig. It has to be something, you know, you have to start a business. And I thought, you know, like what someone else said in the chat earlier, I thought, what? Start a business? What if I fail? You know, my credibility, my reputation, my name will be attached to this thing, this business. And if it does badly, I'll be so embarrassed, you know, so I thought. But I, at that point in my life, I was young, I was single, and I thought, if there is a time to fail, this is the time. I don't have, I won't lose anything if I fail. And if I fail, I can always try to look for another job. So that's what happened. And in 2013, I ended up registering Earth Heir as a business. And so a lot of you also talked about funds, like starting the business. So starting Earth Heir, I actually ended up using almost all of my personal savings. And I had personal savings because of working for more than 12 years. So because of the fact that, I didn't start my business straight away, I think that made a difference. And also, one of the questions that I often get asked is, should I start a business? Should I start a social enterprise now or should I wait? And I always encourage young people to work for other people first. Not only do you get to then make mistakes on someone else's dime, but you also get to learn a lot of things and learn work discipline and work ethics and learn different skills, which you can then apply to running your own social enterprise or business one day. Yeah. Okay, I don't want to keep talking. Kate, you can ask the next question if you like.
That was wonderful. I think it was so insightful, and I thank you for your openness. I had a question here about what made you leave your corporate job, but we've heard about the pull factors and your purpose-driven kind of cause that drove you down this path of sustainable fashion. You tapped into your personal history and experiences and looked at the world, and you found a place to really channel into. Could you tell us then a little bit about Earth Heir and how it's serving Southeast Asia and how you see it empowering traditional artisans that you engage with, and maybe at the same time how the last 8 years have impacted you working with these people?
Sure. So when I first started Earth Heir, maybe I'll also share a little bit about how it made me feel. So in my life, every job or every point of education that I pursued in my life was, because I thought, oh, I want it to do. I want to go to the best universities. I want to work in the best companies around the world. I was actually living to build a shiny CV. It was about making my CV look good. That was what I was living for. And so when that incident happened, that's when I started thinking about, I haven't updated my CV in years. I mean, obviously because I started Earth Heir, but I started thinking about how do I live a life that's not driven by this desire for a shiny CV and building material wealth for myself, in terms of the fact that I started thinking when I'm 60, for example, or 70, and I look back at my life, would I have been happy with a big house and a shiny CV and nice cars, and think that, but then I haven't really done much for the world or for society. So with all of this, when I quit my job and I started Earth Heir, I initially struggled with low self-esteem, right? Because before I was working in, a sovereign wealth fund and making a lot of money. And then now I'm a nobody, and I don't know what I'm doing. I started this social enterprise. We're making absolutely not enough money to even pay myself a salary. I was living in my parents' home. My father would come home and be like, what is this? Because the living room and my bedroom and everywhere around the house was filled with stock of Earth Heir. And, my dad would be like, is this a warehouse or is this a house? I particularly remember one incident. It was Earth Heir's first pop-up. I was at a bazaar. There was a table and I had all of like our silk scarves and stuff from Cambodia. And one of my ex-bosses, I saw him come into the mall. You know what I did? I quickly took a break and went to the toilet so he wouldn't see me, because I was too embarrassed for him to see me, like, you know, selling a bunch of scarves on a table. And that was something I really struggled with. Am I really making an impact with my life? Am I using my talents to the best of my abilities? Because my father used to say, like, how much money are you going to make selling scarves? And the revenue that Earth Heir made in the first year was like 1/5 of my yearly salary. So he's like, you could have just worked at Kazana, donated your, part of your salary, and you've still done more than what you're doing now. But the important point that I realized then is that it's not about how much money you can give out. It's about the fact that you need change makers executing a solution, because there is a lot of money in the world. There are billions, there's millions, right? But for that money to function well and for that money to work, you need people who are going to execute those solutions to make the world a better place. So that was when I realized that, as hard as this is, and in the first 3 years were the hardest years for me. I maxed out my credit cards. I spent sometimes many days sitting in the toilet and crying, thinking, how am I going to pay off my credit cards? How am I going to make this work? How am I going to pay myself? I didn't pay myself a salary for 3 years. And it was in 2015 that, we won the British Council Social Enterprise Award. And I was given the opportunity to be an Eisenhower Fellow, because in August 2015, I actually wanted to give Earth Heir up, because I thought, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm not earning enough money. I'm struggling. I'm depressed. But when I went to the Eisenhower, to the US, for the Eisenhower Fellowship, and I met with a lot of amazing people who supported me and said, you know what, don't give up. You're doing a great thing. And so when I came back to Malaysia, I had new ideas for Earth Heir. And the photo that you see behind me is our physical space. And the British Council Award helped us open up a physical space. And I was able to come up with a new idea for Earth Heir. So instead of just trying to sell our products B2C, I started looking at selling our products B2B as well. So our first big order was to make 400 bags for a conference. And the indigenous artisan that I worked with, she lives in Borneo. Her name is Nelly. And she was like, Sasi, there's no way I can make 400 bags. And then I sat with her and I walked her through like how much we were paying her, how much her raw materials cost, how long it takes for her to make a bag. And, I actually helped her understand this is your margin. So you can actually pay someone else to weave this bag. And in the end, we managed to make the 400 bags. And Nelly made almost 8 months of income from that one order. And that's when I realized, okay, this is what we need to be growing as well. B2B orders, B2C orders. And now at Earth Heir, we've actually gotten to a point where we do a lot of advisory work as well. So we do a lot of artisan training. So one of the things that I realized is, Earth Heir, we're a small social enterprise. There's only so much money that we have and so many artisans that we can buy from. But what if we can help other artisans do what we do on their own? So we started training artisans on design, on production, on quality, and on pricing, so that artisans can then build their own businesses and they can communicate and sell to clients on their own. So that's where Earth Heir is now, almost 7 or 8 years later. We broke even, I believe, in 2017. And in 2016, October was when I first paid myself a salary, and I hired the first employee of Earth Heir, who actually became my business partner, Xiao Cheng. So now we are a team of about 6 people, still a small team, and surprisingly last year was, I thought it's going to be a very difficult year, but we made more money last year than we did in any other year. That's because during the pandemic, we actually pivoted into making PPE and making face masks. So one of the things that I learned is, because I had worked before I started my social enterprise, and I had worked in different industries, right? And worked in different parts of the world, it gave me the skills to be adaptable. And one of the things that I learned during the pandemic was to build an adaptable business model, like build a business with an adaptable business model, right? So you have to be able to change with the situation, and you have to be resilient when, when the pandemic hit and stuff. So working before I started my social enterprise gave me the skills and the confidence to not give up when things hit the fan, basically. Yeah.
Wow, I think that's I think your discussion on the struggles and the reality behind the social enterprise life is really interesting. Touches a little bit on what one of our Gen A's, and please let me know if I mispronounce your name, but Kaifurudin, about keeping your personal mission statement relevant even when you're having changes to your business and adapting. Would you like to ask your question, or shall I move on to another one?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. We can go to the Q&A or whatever.
We also have another one about how you ended up in looking at artisanal craftsmanship, and particularly around, I guess, making the change towards that sort of space. So if you'd like to touch on that a little bit more, in terms of, the same idea, supporting like local enterprises in that space, and, why you might want to make that jump at the start of your career.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't know I was going to be running a social enterprise working with artisans. I mean, when I was in Cambodia, when I met with those artisans, it was just, I thought, okay, the scarves are beautiful. I think they're very underpriced, I should try and help by buying it, paying them a higher price so that they could earn more money rather than selling it to unethical or middlemen that didn't help them earn enough money. And, I studied finance. I have no experience in fashion or retail or building a brand. So when I first started, I didn't even know how to price our products. I didn't even know what's a wholesale price, what's a retail price, how do you build a brand? The fact that we need to have a logo and a tagline, so all of these things, I was in a completely new industry, not knowing what I was doing. I literally learned in the first 3 years. And the first 3 years is when I traveled a lot. I used up a lot of my money to travel to Cambodia, India, Indonesia, Vietnam, to meet with artisans, to learn about how they work, what are their challenges, how can we work with them on design, how can I support them with what I'm doing. So it was during those first 3 years is when I really understood the sector more. And then when I started doing Earth Heir, that's when I actually kind of realized that the artisan sector is actually the second biggest sector after agriculture to impact the developing world, in the sense that if you want to make an impact on the marginalized, after agriculture, the artisan sector was the second biggest opportunity to make an impact. So I kind of realized that, I did something without thinking. I never wrote a business plan. I didn't do anything. I just went and did it because I saw a need. I wanted to help. I did it. And then I found the reasons to support what I was doing. So I kind of did it the other way around. And then I realized that the fashion industry is the second most polluting industry in the world. And I started learning about sustainable fashion and how the fashion industry is so incredibly bad for the environment, fast fashion, and how people who are in the fashion supply chain are treated poorly, and when that's when I also brought in Fashion Revolution into Malaysia, because the Rana Plaza collapse happened in Bangladesh and almost 1,200 people died to make our clothes, right? And so I thought, this is terrible. We need to start thinking about the materials and the processes and the people behind the products that we buy. We need to start asking questions about who made what I'm buying? How is it made? What is in it? And what is the impact of that product at the end of its useful life? Is it going into a landfill, or is it recycled? Is it, thinking about circular economy? So all of these things kind of became part of my mission at Earth Heir, and Earth Heir, like I wanted Earth Heir to help consumers understand all of these issues and to grow their awareness, so that we don't become blind consumers and we become conscious consumers. And now, after many years of running Earth Heir, I've become an advocate for encouraging companies to not have a CSR program, where they allocate a certain amount of money at the, and say like, oh, okay, we have like $2 million and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. That is not corporate responsibility. Corporate responsibility and sustainable development and sustainable business models should be about incorporating ethical practices into your business. So looking at your procurement, looking at your supply chain, looking at who are you buying from? How are you supporting your vendors? And are they ethical? Are your products ethical? Are your services ethical? So really looking at your internal business model as a whole, and walking through that and rethinking how you're impacting communities, the world through your business.
Picking up on that too, that reflection point, it'd be great to speak about some of your personal branding tips. So how have you adapted your personal brand from, the 24-year-old working in the corporate space to becoming your own best advocate and an advocate for sustainability, as we were just saying then, within, the fashion sector and beyond?
Okay, so one of the things I must say is, do not start a social enterprise or any business for what you may think of as fame or attention or whatever it is, because this is not a glamorous thing. I mean, when I first started, so like when you come at this point in my life and this point of Earth Heir's evolution, this is like 8 years down the line. But initially, when I was struggling and we were not making any money and no one cared about who I was or what I was doing, right? It can be very demotivating when you think like no one cares about what I'm trying to do. But I kept on because of my personal mission statement. And I kept on because I believed in what I was doing, and when I reached that point of, those 3 years when I thought I was going to give up, and then, I found a new way of growing Earth Heir, and we started making money and Earth Heir started growing. So I would say that in any business or any journey, there's always a tipping point, but you must never compare your journey with someone else's. because it's very easy to look at someone else and think like, oh my gosh, they're getting so much attention. Look at how much money they're making, or da 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 da. You cannot do that. If you do that, then you lose sight of what it is you're doing. And in the end, I realized that, it doesn't matter who cares about what I'm doing or how many people are paying attention. What matters is that I know I am doing what I believe in and I'm doing good. So I told myself, keep doing the good that you're doing, and one day good things will come. So that's what I would encourage all of and all of you who are listening is, don't do something that you think is fancy or will be like cool and you'll get a lot of attention because I'll be the first person doing X, Y, and Z. Like, that cannot be your motivation. Your motivation has to be your personal mission statement and what it is that drives you as a human, and what it is that you believe you want to contribute and leave a legacy for in this world. That is what should be driving you. And if you stick to that and you keep on with that, people will see your passion. People will see the good that you're doing eventually, but we cannot start with the desire to get attention or whatever. So in terms of personal branding, I never thought about it. I just did what I was doing, right? And then as people started seeing what we were doing, we got a lot of media attention. People started emailing us and getting in touch and be like, oh, I want to know your story. Why did you leave investment banking? Why did you start Earth Heir? And that's kind of how it grew. So all of the PR, we've never hired a PR agent or anyone, and all of the media coverage that we got for Earth Heir is organic. It's been inbound. The only time I reached out for media coverage was when we, launched our refugee-made jewelry, and I messaged a journalist on Instagram. She writes for Forbes, and I was like, "Hey, we're the first, jewelry brand working with the UN making refugee-made jewelry. Would you like to write about us?" And then she interviewed us and wrote an article on Forbes. So I think that with the whole idea of personal branding, it's, don't do it to build a brand. Do it, do what you're doing aligning with your values and your purpose, and the branding will come.
That's really wonderful. I think that's such an authentic way to go about, not only the personal mission, but what you do beyond creating your personal mission. Do you have any final tips for those of us who are still thinking, even though we know now a little bit of the difficulties that you can face in a social enterprise? If we feel like money's an issue, if we feel like, buying in from others is an issue, do you have any final advice on how to make those first steps towards a social enterprise or a different career that's more impact driven?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that, everyone has to quit their job and start a social enterprise to be doing something impactful. In all of you, in the jobs that you're doing right now, you can be such, great agents of change. I mean, like Kate, and I don't know what the rest of you are doing, but where you are right now, you can already be making an impact if you are able to ask the right questions and encourage your colleagues, your bosses, to think about how it is that you're doing what you're doing, and are we respecting people and the environment in the process of doing what we're doing? Are we creating waste? I mean, it's just asking questions and encouraging this kind of discussions to take place at the workplace alone, I think is making an impact. So you don't have to give up a monthly salary and go through the process that I did and become an entrepreneur or start a startup or whatever. to make a difference. And I think that you can be where you are, and you can be impacting social enterprises and NGOs in your own time, with the skills and talents that you have. Because I don't think the solution is for everybody to start their own social enterprise. It's also about, I didn't get to where I am today on my own. I got here because of family, friends, and clients who believed in what we're doing. Like, for example, like our logo. A friend of mine who's a designer, he, a branding expert, he helped me design the logo. And when I tried to pay him, he's like, no. He said, one day I know that I will get something back. So it's kind of like paying it forward. So he helped me, and then I helped other people, and then I referred a lot of people to him for his business. So it's like, he then contributed to Earth Heir with his skills, so he created impact from where he was. He didn't leave what he was doing. So I think that, you can leverage on your skills and your passions where you are and help impact the community through others. You don't have to be the person who is at the forefront and be the face of it, and deal with the brunt of everything. You can still support and be a cheerleader and give of your skills.
That's wonderful. And acknowledging the time, although I wish we had more time, I want to really thank you for all that advice, because honestly, I don't think I've ever sat in such a practical session that gives just so many advice on how to kind of guide our own personal mission. And I'm sure a lot of us will be very interested to start our own kind of thinking on a personal mission and how we might like to lead our lives. So thank you. I'll hand back over to Eloise for some closing remarks, but it's been wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate. No, I don't know if Eloise is going to mention this, but I wrote a guide which I had sent to Eloise, and I think
we would love to see it.
Yeah, she can email it. Yes. It was sort of how I wrote my personal mission statement, and you don't have to, like I said, it's not about what you want to do next, but even where you are now, if you write your personal mission statement, it'll help you figure out which opportunities you should say yes to and which opportunities you could say no to in your life. Yeah. Sorry.
No, not at all. Wow. Thank you so much, Sasi. I have written 3 pages of notes of inspirational quotes that I think we actually all needed to hear today. What a great way to break up our Tuesday, or for some of us to start our Tuesday. I am so honored to have been able to just listen to your words of wisdom. I think a lot of us in Gen A and wider can really resonate with this idea of maybe we don't need that shiny CV that everyone else is saying we should chase. Let's really reflect on our own, personal circumstances, where we're at, and start within those parameters before building outwards. And I'm so grateful we could record it today. My colleague later and I were just messaging going, oh my gosh, we need to listen to this almost every day for a bit of inspiration. And, that idea of you need, change makers executing the solution. So whether or not you're, have thousands and thousands of dollars, or you're just really starting something that is your own passion project, I think there was something for everyone in here, and I just want to say a massive thank you for you for sharing that with us, and for everybody else just also to be listening in, and you all sort of stayed on until the end, so clearly this is valuable for you too. I will share that writing your own personal mission statement as well, so please look out for a follow-up email, and of course I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't tell you about another event that we've got coming up tomorrow. I think it really sort of has a nice synergy with this event. We're going to be exploring Buddhism and mindfulness in Asia tomorrow with a guided meditation. So maybe take some of the things we learned today, meditate on it, and think about its connection to the region and your connection to the region. So please stay tuned. And for our Australian-based Gen A's, thanks for coming back. I promise to let you know very soon of when we're actually going to meet up in person, COVID permitting. So a massive thank you to Kate. You're such a natural at this moderating. And I also want to thank our intern, Fang Yuan, who also helped me write the project brief for this event. It was wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, Sasi.